Stop. Hey, Duquette, stop being so negative all the time. All right.
Let's have some faith, Puck. Let's have some faith.
I don't know if I've got much faith in this baseball team anymore. Jim Duquette is with us. It's the GM podcast here on pucksports.com. Former Mets and Orioles GM, of course, host of MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM. Monday visit brought to you by Flat Stick Pub. Perfect spot for a date night, guys night, ladies night, or large group event. Visit one of their 6 locations across the Northwest at flatstickpub.com. Jim joins us from the Puck Sports Studios, built by Limbeck Lumber, and I don't know. You tell me. This team is 1-5 since we last spoke. They are now 4 games back in the American League West, Jim. They're 5.5 games back in the wild card standings, and it just feels like hope is all lost. I mean, people have got the pitchforks out here. Yeah. They are marching down to T-Mobile Park, and they want heads, and they want heads now.
I mean, I understand that part for sure. I mean, that, I think that, you want accountability. The hard part, the frustrating part about this is, we did see the offense perk up for just a little bit. We saw some signs, and then you're like, okay, boy, just wait till Julio comes back, and now it's going to be a different offense. And, there is a pathway still, right? We always know that. But the formula, the direct formula, and this is how we always felt in the front office, and still front offices feel the same way. Beat the teams that are below 500 that you should beat. Like, beat on them. 2 out of 3, sweep them, and then play 500 against the teams that are over 500, right? And boy, they're really creating some difficult issues for themselves to try to overcome. Now, they could do it. Obviously, they beat the Phillies at home. They beat the Mets at home. Those are really good teams that are in the postseason mix. Phillies are definitely going to be in. Mets are fading since the Mariners put the sleeper hold on the Mets season. Yeah. And the Mets went and they lost a series to Oakland. They just lost a series to Miami. So they're taking on water, every day it seems like. And the Mariners had a part in that. So they're capable. But I hope that the high water point of this season wasn't that last series against the Mets. That's what it appears like at the moment.
We've talked a lot about, what is it going to take to win the division? And I'm not sure, what a lot of the chatter, at least in Seattle, has always been, we think 90 wins. Like 90 wins would get them the division. Now, maybe it won't quite be 90, but in order to go 90, to get 90 wins, Jim, they need to go 26-11.
Right.
To finish off the last 37 games. And I don't think there's anybody here, you tell me nationally, that thinks this team is going to rattle off 26 wins in their last 37.
No, there's nobody that myself, anyone that I talk about this all the time with, national writers, former GMs, current GMs that will tell you off the record. Seattle doesn't have that in them, that type of record. Now, I would like to go back and try to think, at one point in the season when they were leading the division, they had a win streak of, in a certain number of games over 500, which I don't have in front of me. So we know that there is some capability, and that's not etched in stone that it's a 90 wins to win the division. It has been that way in the past, but here's the thing. Just looking at Houston for a second. So the Mariners have this uphill battle, right? Dodgers. By the way, Dodgers haven't played all that great lately.
Right.
They do have a favorable pitching matchup tonight. Then they play the Giants. Giants been up and down. They've been better as of late, but they're on the fringe of the postseason. When you look at what Houston has, they've got Boston, Baltimore, Philly, and Kansas City. Those are their next 4 series. Those are really, really difficult teams to play, and the way they're all kind of playing at one time. So if they're going to give up the ground that they lost, this is where they have to do it in these next 4 series. And there's going to be a mixed bag of teams, obviously, and levels. But this is where Seattle has to make up their ground.
Where do you think the mark is to win the West? If it's not 90, what does it take?
I mean, I think it's likely going to be in that 87, 88 wins, something like
80,
that.
Okay. 87, 88 wins. Because if If Houston right now, if they finish 23-12 the rest of the way, I believe that would give them 90 wins.
Right. So 20 and
21
15,
and 14, 21 and 14 gets them to 88.
Right. 21 and 14, not unreasonable. 20 and 15 with the tough schedule
gives them to 87.
Gets them to 87. And that's the target. Listen, they're out of the, usually the wild card, the third wild card has been at that 90-win plateau. I talked to the president of baseball operations of the Rays, Eric Neander, and he said this himself, that it was trending. Their analysis, he's one of the smartest ones in the game. He said that their analysis was it was going to be 90 wins for the third wild card. I don't think either of these two teams, Houston or Seattle, has a chance at the wild card. And so you kind of look at that and say, all right, well, it's not going to be probably not going to be 90 wins for them. 86, 87, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So it's doable. It's doable. But I mean, I never liked having to rely on someone else's help to get you there. But that's where we are with Seattle.
Well, I'm just looking, and nothing screams don't do this more than whether you're recording or doing live work to do math.
Yes.
Because, so no one hold this against me, by the way, if I get this wrong, all right? We can go back and check the work later. But in order for Seattle, we looked at what it would take to just get to 85 wins, to go 85 and 77. Would that be enough? That's, 21 and 16. I mean, to get to 87, if we think 87 may be the number, 23 and 14 the rest of the year. I mean, that's, they're playing 9 games over 500, which, since June, I think it's June 18th, June 19th, since they had 10-game lead over Houston, they've gone 20 and 30. And it just seems if you go on these big streaks that they need to go on, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's normally the offense that allows you to go on these big winning streaks.
You have to be a well-balanced roster. Very rarely can you go and just pitch your way all the way to the postseason. Like it just doesn't happen. And there's some other teams. I'm going to mention the Cubs, whose starting pitching has been top 5, and then there's one other team that's not going to make the postseason that is top 5, and you're going. So there are teams who have good pitching that are going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing. I think it might be Seattle. So it's like Seattle and the Cubs right now, top 5 pitching, not just starters, but relief as well. And, it's not I don't think it's quite as good as with the Cubs there, but, it is possible to have that kind of good pitching staff and not get in. And that's the biggest concern. It's always been the problem here, with Seattle here recently is this offense. And that's what they're going to live or die on that particular group. And, there's going to be accountability here because you revamped that offense last winter because you thought you had too many strikeouts, and all you did is add more strikeouts, not less. That's like the most glaring thing that strikes to me. Like all you kept talking about is, we got to cut down on our strikeouts, and it's gone in the other direction, which is stunning to me.
Had they not pulled out that game Sunday, right, and avoid the sweep of the Pirates, did you think there was a possibility they would have made a move with Scott Servais? They would have fired him?
Boy, it is so rare to make a late season change when you're in the postseason mix. I find it hard to believe that they would have. The one that stands out, and this goes, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but the Milwaukee Brewers, the year they had CC Sabathia, they traded for him from Cleveland. So it was before his free agency. This goes back to probably 07, 08. They were scuffling in the division. I believe that was the year, and they hired Dale Swaim as their manager down the stretch, but it was like the final 10 days. It was such an unconventional move, and I believe they got into the postseason. It just doesn't happen, and again, I could be mixing up the years, but I think he replaced Ned Yost, who then, by the way, went on to Kansas City and got a World Series. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to this. I've done this enough now where I'm never a fan of making changes in season if you're going to try to win.
Yeah.
You just usually just play it out because if there's a disruption, it's worse than trading players from your major league roster for other major league players like we've seen up there, right? Great. Let's go back down to Ken McGraven conversation for a second, right? It just causes all this problems, upsets the clubhouse. So I just, there may not be a ton of support from Scott. I don't know that. It seems like there's support within the team with him. So if that's the case, that would be one thing that I'd be looking for if I was the GM, not just about the wins and losses, but does he have support within the clubhouse? If that's the case, then you wouldn't make a change.
If they do, okay, and I agree with you. I don't think that they would do one. I don't think they were going to do anything had they lost to Pittsburgh. Nor do I think if they stumble here against the Dodgers or come home and stumble against, have a bad series against the Giants. I don't think they're going to do anything. I think at this point, 37 games, as we record this on Monday, August 19th, I don't think that they're going to. I think they'll wait until the end of the season there to do something. If they do fail and not make it, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about an entire cleaning of the house, do you think, from their point of view? Or do you think it's one of these things where ownership says, hey, we think that maybe the idea is we're going the right direction with Dipoto and Justin Hollander, but we need to make a move with our manager?
I think it would be difficult if they didn't get to the postseason this year, and that'd be 2 in a row. And we know the long history, of them not getting in and then breaking it, 3 years ago. But if they went 2 years in a row without going into the postseason, I think everything would be in play. Yeah. But I think if you're the owner, you'd have to call for some kind of significant change. I think that now, again, that owner operates differently, right? He says one thing, does another. That's the worst, absolute worst. If you're in the front office, and it's hard, you can't own it, you can't say it, but we all know that they didn't have any money, and then he said there was. Like, that right there is, not being straight with your fan base, and so he might say publicly to cover his butt, we're going to make some changes, and then he puts it in the hands of the general manager and says, listen, do what you want. But that's one of those that, again, these are hypotheticals, but I think it's a very real possibility that, they've been together forever, Jerry and Scott. Mm-hmm. So, you could see an owner saying, well, I'm going to make the change with both. You don't see it very often. The Mets did do it. The Mets made a change with their baseball ops and manager last year, right? They brought in David Stearns, who oversees their front office. That was when Billy Upper, was going to stay on. And then they brought in Carlos Mendoza over Buck Showalter. So it has happened recently. It just doesn't happen very often.
How is the Mariners ownership group, which is led by the figurehead is John Stanton? How are they perceived nationally in the circles of MLB?
I mean, I don't follow every conversation locally, but it seems to me it's the same nationally that it is locally. They feel like, from an ownership standpoint, they have not put in the money. It's a big money making operation. And listen, when I was in the front office, I never begrudged an owner for not wanting to lose money, even though fans don't care about it. Like, I did have the business mind of it. Like, I never felt like the owner should sign up to lose money, right? But there are years when you look at it and you go, okay, we are trending up. We need to get ahead of ourselves. We need to spend because there is a benefit after you win for season tickets. That's when you make your money. Is if there's a lag, we used to call it. The season ticket base usually goes up after you win. When I say win, like, there's optimism, all of that, right? But there always felt like that Seattle would kind of dip a toe in the water, mm-hmm. but they would never jump in all in. They would never go all feet first, dive head first in, let's go, let's spend the money. And if there was a period of time and that happened, it was a while ago, and maybe even the prior ownership group.
Yeah, it's just I mean, it's the same. It's the same out here, Jim. They just people don't feel like that this group is all the way in. That they just don't. They've never felt that way about them. If they, I mean, is it too early to start looking? I mean, what if they seem to be attached at the hip, Dipoto and Servais? If they decide, no, listen, we're just going to get rid of one. I mean, who do you bring in? Because it just feels like Jerry and his crew feels, I don't want to say heavy. I'll use the heavy-handed, but it just feels like why they work so well together is because it just felt there's a lot of influence from that front office on what the coaching staff does. And I would assume that maybe that's not appealing to a lot of managers, that they don't maybe like so much of that, I guess, heavy-handedness.
That's been going on for a while, right? Is the more involvement with the front offices. They end up deciding that they're going to, make suggestions for the lineup. That I never liked that. There was old school guys who and it started to grow when I was in the front office, that influence. But I do think that these days there is way more of an influence on, putting together the lineups and having conversations with your manager about how he dealt with things. And so, I think it's more common. There may be some, here's a couple of guys that I would say would have interest. So Skip Schumacher, manager of the year with the Marlins recently. I think he was last year, manager of the year. He already opted out of his and asked for a club option to be wiped away. Now, I don't think he has any Mariners ties from what I remember. I don't think he played for Seattle in his career. He's mostly a Cardinal. Very good baseball man, and would fit with some of the criteria that I would think the organization would want. Everyone talks that Dave Roberts' job could be in jeopardy with the Dodgers if, for some reason, they don't go deep into the postseason because of what they're spending on their payroll. Just take those two guys. Dave Roberts certainly wouldn't want to sit on the sideline for very long, so that Seattle would be, depending on what else is out there, that'd be a good destination spot. And Schumacher, hasn't been in the game that long enough. These 30 jobs are hard to come by when you get one. And if there's an opening that would, Chicago's White Sox, that's not going to be a destination spot for anybody of experience. So, I think those would be two candidates right out of the gate, just kind of throwing them out there. And that doesn't even count guys that are, maybe inexperienced, that have no managerial experience that could be a fit in there. I just don't know if they have anybody internally that they would want to talk to too.
A lot, Jim, has been discussed just about who's the most to blame for their current situation, and if the current situation continues. Hey, I've got two dogs barking all the time. You're good.
Unbelievable.
You're good. What kind of dog do you have again?
We have a cockapoo, and she's 13.
Yeah,
acts like she's 2.
Oh my God! Well, that's good for you.
She's got a ton of energy, but like in spots like this, even on my radio show, you go, "Come on, stop it, Cassie."
It's all no, it's no problem. We got 2 labs. They make noise all the time. I get it.
Your lab. Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah, the ownership gets the blame, and then it's front office and manager. And I'm just curious, like, I've always maintained that it's ownership, and we've kind of discussed this, not spending enough money to be able to acquire these great better players for them, but when it comes, and then of course the manager has are there some on-field decisions and decisions they make with bullpen starters, all that kind of stuff that leads to some of the issues. But then when it comes to the front office, like, even given the amount of money that maybe Jerry has been afforded to him, has he made enough right moves? Has he made enough right trades? I mean, when you look at the talent on the field, has he done enough? Has he done enough offensively here in the 9 years to create a more balanced baseball team? Because they just continue to have the same issue year in and year out. It's not pitching. It's just offense. They cannot deliver a consistent offense year in and year out.
So I'll answer that question with another question. 9 years he's been here. How many postseason appearances?
1.
One, if you look around the game, there aren't many front offices that have had that type of leash.
Yeah.
Been allowed that type of leash without the success.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare. And, I'd say the Padres, until recently, were in a different, Padres, they changed managers 6 times. AJ Preller down there, I think he's had at least 6 managers, if you count the interim labels too. And he hasn't gotten it right and hasn't figured it out. He had a 1 NLCS appearance during that stretch. And then he had a wild card where I think there was a wild card. I'm trying to remember now. No, actually, I think that was the year they went to the NLCS, was the one that they beat the Mets in the wild card. So now they're likely going to be in the postseason this year. But at least I was of the opinion that potentially his job could have been in jeopardy if they didn't get into the postseason. So I think the same thing has to be at least in play here with this front office group. The other thing that I was going to mention as part of it related to the manager is if he's on a shorter term deal, and I forget where his contract goes, and I know that now they're trying to keep these things secret a lot of times, but that does factor into an exceptional manager wanting to come up there, because he's going to want a long-term deal. And a lot of times, that term wouldn't necessarily want to exceed beyond the front office. So it's complicated, these decisions, and sometimes financially, it takes an owner who hasn't shown a willingness to bite the bullet in that area to make wholesale changes when guys still have contracts that they have to adhere to. So there's that aspect of it. You kind of look at it, we look at it from the fan standpoint, and then there's the business side of things too.
Well, it's believed that both are under the final years of their deal. That Ryan Divish
Right.
of the Seattle Times has reported that it's their belief that they are in right now the final year.
They're in it now, right?
In it right now. So we shall see, and see what decisions they'll make here at the end of the season. It just seems like it's a hell of a stretch that they're going to have to go on to even get to 87 wins. Again, to get to 87 right now, 23-14. So you're playing 9 games, above 500, and then Houston is just Houston. They've got this is why it was always problematic with them how poorly they started, because what Seattle doesn't have is that championship postseason DNA.
Yeah.
And there's just something to be said for that. Just you have that in you, and it helps you in moments like this, and it's helping them right now.
The other, I would totally agree with you on that. The other thing is they've had they've made a lot of the right decisions. They do have a level of star player to their ownership's credit. He spent over the luxury tax. They have gone all in some seasons. Like they give up prospects for good players. Like they gave up 3 quality prospects last year for Justin Verlander. Took on $25 million in salary. Yes, the Mets paid down the rest of it. But I mean, when's the last time the Mariners ownership group did that? I mean, I can't even remember the last time. It just hasn't happened. It's okay, a little bit of addition like they did this year, talent wise and money wise, but it's like you're doing major league for major league talent. You're swapping out money. You're not adding much. Like that to me. And I think I'll add one more thing. The star players for the Astros, it's not just Yordan Alvarez, right? It's Altuve, still a star. Bregman, still a star. They're doing all this without Kyle Tucker, who maybe going to come back at some point. Right. They're pitching. They're going to, when Verlander comes back this week, they're going to go with 6 starters because they feel like they have 6 deep, and they want to watch, be careful with their innings pitch limit. So, and then they have Hader at the back end too, where they spent a ton of money this winter. So they've been spending money, and it's really been at the expense. Their success has been at the expense of pretty much everyone else in the division. The Rangers spent money. They got, you start to see that's not always the final result is winning, but boy, does it really help your margin of error, and I think that's the thing that the Mariners have needed that they haven't had.
What's required from them here in the next week? Three at LA, which starts on Monday. They come back with 3 with the Giants. Is 4-2 minimum for them in the next 6?
I mean, I think that whenever you're on the road, if you can do play the 500 from this point on, I mean, it's already lost this road trip. I mean, you just get your
Yeah.
first win yesterday. It's, against teams that were both struggling. I do think though, I think the San Francisco series is at home. Or is
Yeah.
that on the road too?
No, that's yeah. Three. They end the road trip 3 with the Dodgers, and then they come back home Friday with 3 against the Giants.
Right. So, if they, the time to play the Dodgers right now, I think is right now. You don't have Glasnow on the mound. Kershaw has been pretty darn good. You're going to get Stone tonight, but they've been backing him off pitching wise. I don't have the rest of the rotation right in front of me, but I think it's another young, inexperienced guy. So, I mean, this is the time to kind of try to beat the Dodgers, and try to win 2 of 3, and then. San Francisco's not been good on the road, so try to win 2 or 3 of those, and that would be a good start. Like you just got to start winning series again.
Yeah.
It looked like they were on their way to big things here after that last homestand, and it's really they've fallen flat.
Well, you're right about this next stretch of games here for for the Astros. We're looking at the next 7, the next 10, next 14 games. You're right. I mean, they'll look back at this next 14 games, and if they can win yet another division and get to the postseason, it's probably going to be done right during this stretch of games. 3 with Boston, then 4 on the road against Baltimore, 3 on the road against Philadelphia before coming home. 4 there against the Kansas City Royals. I mean, this is it for them. This is their big stretch of baseball.
It's their big stretch, and if they are playing 500 or better, because the Mariners' schedule is back and forth. That's where just kind of you're almost like holding serve. They're going to be in a much better situation. So. Yeah, you got to hope for them that they come out of this with a couple of series losses, or even get swept. And see where you are here after the next, I'd say next 12 to 14, next 2 weeks, basically. You're going to have because here's the thing: if you're 3 or 4 back in the month of September, man, it is hard to make that up. I mean, we saw it last year, with Texas falling, fast late, but there was also a lot of head-to-head match, down the stretch too between the two. Like you just run out of time. What is it? Seattle and Houston, 1 series left. Like it's almost when you start asking for help from others, it really is a hard way to get in.
They get the series with the Dodgers. Ohtani is currently 1 home run away from 40, and then 3 stolen bases away also from 40. Generally, you don't like to hand out these MVPs to just DHs, right? Because they don't get to play in the field. But this has got to be the exception, right?
Everybody I talk to, and when you watch him play, like. That's the MVP. Like it just becomes apparent how good he's been. Now, interestingly, he had a stretch. He's had a couple of homers here recently, but he was hitting about $128 over an 8-game stretch in that series, including Milwaukee. He hit the home run yesterday. But I mean, he's a force for sure. Now they have Betts back. Betts has had I think half of the games he's been back, he's had multi-hit games. Like he has hit the ground running. I think he's had a hit in almost every game. Like it doesn't even look like he missed any time. But the one silver lining there too, if you're the Mariners fan, Freddie Freeman has a finger ailment problem, middle finger. He jammed it, didn't play yesterday. He's having imaging on it. Like he may have to miss another game or two. Or more, you might see, but you're going to have Max Muncy coming back soon too. Like later in this week, it sounds like he's getting healthy.
Yeah. Hey, real quick before we wrap up, what do you think of this, which would be a radical idea and be years away from happening? Your thoughts on this that came out last week of this proposal and discussion in Major League Baseball about the 6-inning rule for starting pitchers, that they would be required to pitch 6 innings. There would be exceptions to it. I think it was like you're down by a certain number of runs, or it obviously gets hurt. But that the requirement would be that every starter's got to go 6 innings. What do you think? This got legs, you think?
I don't think it has much legs. The 100, I think there was 100 pitches. If you're 100 pitches,
right,
come out before the 6th. I don't think there's any legs. I talked to a couple of GMs on my show yesterday about this. I think that the short answer is in its totality, trying to breathe more life into starting pitching matchups on a given night.
Right.
It's George Kirby or Logan Gilbert versus Clayton Kershaw. Oh, I'm going to tune in for that starting pitching matchup. Like, we want more of that as a sport, right? Those high profile matchups. And some of that is, having them go deeper. How do we get there, I think, is still kind of up in the air. I don't think that's going to have any legs. There's too many variables there. I do think, though, when you see some of these ideas, that there are some, like, I've heard this one. You have your starting pitcher. When he comes out, if he comes out before the fifth inning, you lose your DH. Now, in theory, that sounds good, but like, pitchers have stopped hitting for now, how many years? 3 years, 4 years?
At
3
least.
years, going on 4. Right? I think 2020 was the first year we had the DH. So now all of a sudden you're gonna have your pitcher start hitting again so that they don't get hurt. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. But so here's a variation. Say, all right, well, you lose the DH that you started. You got to insert him with another DH, presumably a lesser bat,
right,
into the lineup. Or you're taking out one of your best players as a DH. So maybe there's something like that. I think there may be some things, but they're toying around with some of these ideas. But we're a long way away before I think we see anything like that, because they'll test it in the minors. Then you have to negotiate it with the Players Association. So
yeah,
I liked it for us talking about baseball. We get a lot of discussion out of it, but I don't think there's a lot of legs to it.
Well, Jim, it's gonna be a bit until we talk again. No show on August 26th. No show on Labor Day, because no one should ever work on Labor Day. It's literally called Labor Day. No labor, no working at all.
Yes.
Maybe we'll sneak a visit in, maybe that week of the 2nd.
Sure.
But then the following week, the week of September 9th, we'll have you back on, and fingers crossed we'll be taking this whole program live. So we'll have you on to be the same time, or roughly the same time for you. But I think we'll maybe sneak on a visit maybe that week of the 2nd after Labor Day, but then we'll have you back at your normal time, September 9th. I guess my question to you on September 9th is, so right now, that's weeks away, are the Mariners still in it on September 9th?
Mariners will still be in it on September 9th.
Okay.
Now, you didn't ask me the definition, and please don't.
I won't. I'm just asking if they're still in it, or are we going to bury them even more?
Keep it simple. They will still be in it.
Okay, there he is, the Jim Duquette podcast, brought to you by Flat Stick Pub. Visit flatstickpub.com. New episodes every Monday at 1 o'clock, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and, of course, here at pucksports.com. You're the best. We'll talk to you in a few weeks. Thanks, Jim.
Talk to you. Enjoy it.